Hello, guys, and welcome. My name is Matt Muldoon, and this is the Obsessed with God podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by Calgary Shamanic Services, traditional healing and empowerment for the modern world. Guys, I use Calgary Shamanic Services constantly in my life. It is owned by Shaman Wade, the guest today, and Wade offers a full range of shamanic healing services, trainings, and workshops. All the workshops I do are also through Wade. His practice is grounded in strong spiritual ethics, and this guy is committed to healing and transforming you. That's what he does. He's in the business of making you better. He's amazing. Again, I use him all the time. No issue's too big or too small for Wade. All that's required is your intention to overcome what ails you. Visit Wade at calgaryshaman.com. Visit Wade at Facebook at Shaman Wade on Facebook. Wade just started doing some lives on there. It's great. There's a wonderful community of people who are who use the shamanic practice, who use shamans for healing. So it's a great community to be a part of. So check out Wade on Facebook and visit calgaryshaman.com to get a hold of Wade for shamanic services or to take some of Wade's courses that he has coming up. He's got them all listed there. He speaks about it on today's podcast, but all the information you could possibly get is at calgaryshaman.com. Go and check that out. Wade can help you through anything. Believe me, I use Wade to help me through everything in my life. And today's podcast is also brought to you by Obsessed Marketing and Sales Solutions. That's my wife and I's company. If you guys are a spiritual, a holistic, a natural-based business, if you guys have a business like this, if you maybe are a Reiki practitioner, whatever business it is that you have, we really specialize in helping spiritually based people get their voice out there, get their products into the world, express to them what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing. You can check us out at obsessedmarketing.ca on Instagram, Obsessed Marketing on Facebook, and our website is www.obsessedmarketing.ca. We're really trying to knock the stigma off of spiritual people being in business so that more spiritual people can start building businesses, to have more of a voice in the world, to really start making a difference. So again, guys, if you guys have any questions, concerns, you run a spiritual based business, you're trying to make a living with spirituality, you're a naturopath, you're an empath, whatever it is, if you have a business and you're having a hard time getting that out, get a hold of us. We can help you. We can help you get your message out. We can help you actually make a living doing what you love to do and doing what will actually change the world, guys. So get a hold of us if you need any help. Without further ado, the guest on the podcast today is the same as last week. This is Shaman Wade. Wade is the owner of Calgary Shamanic Services. He is my shaman. He's obviously a practicing shaman. He does personal healings. He works with clients. He does workshops. This guy does everything. He's ridiculously educated. He's super intelligent. He's very articulate. I just love him. I can't say enough good stuff about Wade. He's my teacher. He's my friend. I have nothing but amazing things to say about him. So without further ado, here is the second installment of my conversation with Shaman Wade. Enjoy. We as seekers are all searching for that divine experience with our God. Listen in as we discuss different people's stories and perspectives about God from their walk of life and from their part of the world. My name is Matt Muldoon, and this is the Obsessed with God podcast. Okay, Wade, we're live again. For round two.
We're still standing. That's a good sign.
That's right. So how is it going since the last time I spoke to you?
Good, busy. I've been doing workshops, so I had two workshops the past 2 weekends. Had a solstice drum circle, went really well, so just really busy with all that sort of stuff, and yeah, just trying to have fun.
Oh, I was so irritated. I miss your solstice drum circle. Yeah, I was trying everything, but it was, too much with little children running around everywhere. So
Yeah, Monday nights are tough. We usually do them Sunday afternoons, but got to celebrate solstice, and it was a great turnout and lots of very powerful energy, that's for sure.
that's awesome. That's awesome. I want to start the second part of our conversation, Wade, uh, a little bit differently than I started the last one. I have a question for you, and would you speak about one of or a series of events that convinced you that spirit was real? Like whatever started this for you, that God was real, the universe, ether, whatever you want to call it, that it was real. And what was, so I suppose, what was that point in your life when it was no longer, I think there might be something else when you knew there was something else and you were looking around like, oh wow, what was
Mhm.
that?
The funny thing is, I never really was looking for something else. So it's kind of an interesting sort of place to start. For me, it was. I remember my first experience when I was really young, like 3 or 4, and just playing with kids and just being so engrossed in the activity, just becoming the activity itself, playing with the ball, throwing it, inside of our home down a hallway, back and forth. And I remember someone calling my name. I don't know if it was a kid or my mother. And I was so engrossed in the activity, I couldn't identify with the name. I remember like hearing my name, Wade, Wade, and I couldn't. It was something. Part of my consciousness was being drawn to it, but when I started to identify or to listen to the name, I couldn't understand like what's Wade, like what's Wade, and then eventually I kind of realized, oh, that's me. But I was identifying with the kind of consciousness of all things that are arising. So I think that's quite common for a kid, I think, but I think that's one of my earliest type of experiences, and then from there, just having, I remember actually, I said I grew up in rural northern Alberta, so there wasn't much like deep spirituality. I mean, there is inherently there is, but
Yeah.
it's not something you talk about, or people don't talk about Zen or meditation or yoga. That's for sure back then, and late 70s, that's for sure. And I remember we had a substitute teacher. It might have been grade 4 grade 4, and she must have came from the city, or he, I can't remember. And we're just sitting there trying to kill time, and they asked this question, something like, "What is this? Who is this me that's within you? Like, what is this me?" And we all tried to like, we're all like sitting in our desks, like, "What's this me?" And we're thinking, and we're trying to figure it out, and nothing about it. But it kind of stuck with me. It stuck with me, and I remember in high school, came home from school one day, and I was lying on my bed after school, and that thought popped into my head, like, "What is this me? Or what is this I?" And I remember just kind of like going over and over, but actually searching for it, like searching with my consciousness. And I had a very profound awakening, a very eminent type of experience of the isness or beingness of this moment. And I had a number of those types of experiences, like around that age, just sitting outside in nature, and with when you're young, you're always struggling with inherent problems of growing up,
Mm-hmm.
stresses. Someone like me doesn't like me, tests, these sorts of things, your goals and dreams. But and just stepping outside of that, and feeling that piece of that kind of inherent oneness that underlies thing. And I guess what really pushed me down this road was my sister was killed by a drunk driver when I think I was 21. So it threw me in a real deep period of grief, like profound. It was very, very difficult. I remember, I mean, I was on top of the world at that point. I was, I think, finishing off my third year of university, doing an honors degree in psych, excelling at it, and have was going to be a sports psychologist was my plan.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was going perfectly, and then that happens, and it's like, whew, it's just like your whole world is ripped apart in an instant. And I remember it was so bad, thinking I would never wish this on my worst enemy. Like this is such a horrible thing to go through, you know and and I struggled for about 2 years with that. Like just all life was like sucked out of me. Like everything was dull, and there was no
Mm-hmm.
meaning, and just nothing left. And then eventually, I started to realize, well, what do I do with this? Like, what is life? What is death? How can someone be there one moment and then gone the next? I remember kissing my sister's cheek for one last time in her coffin, and just how ice it was, like ice. It just crushed my soul. It riveted me to feel lifelessness, and it really, that stuck with me. Just how could someone be here one moment and be gone the next? Like, what is that? Like, and no one talked to me about this growing up. And
Mm-hmm.
I realized we all hide from death. We're all scared of death. We don't talk about death. It's not a prevalent aspect about our culture, but yet everyone who's born will die. Every
Mm-hmm.
one of us. That's one thing we know for certain. Yet it's always swept under the rug, and it's something we never really confront.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I guess I woke up to spirituality. I did probably a lot of new age stuff to start, read a lot of books.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened for me was I went on a study abroad trip to Europe, to Barcelona, to study in grad school, more studying architecture and urban design and these sorts of things, and environmental science. It was the first time I actually felt an opening again. I remember when I was kind of, at that point, I had no desire to ever travel. I don't know why. Like, I grew up, coming to Calgary was a big
Okay.
deal for me. I say I'm at the city. Why do I want to go anywhere else?
Mm-hmm.
But when I got to Europe, I was, quite out of trepidation. Like, I never really I thought about going. I just had, for some reason, I had this huge desire to do this program, and I engaged in it. And when I got to Europe, I remember had a lot of fear in me, like, oh my God, I'm in another country. I'm in London, so it's not a big change, really, but you
Yeah.
have all these ideas in your head. And then I went to Paris, and everyone speaks French, and then realizing that, hey, we're all human, and just not being able to understand a language isn't a barrier. Like, we're all communicating, we're human. And just by standing on the periphery of society, you can really read and know what's going on very quickly through body language and what's happening and not happening. And through that experience, what gave me confidence in myself again, realizing I can handle anything that's thrown at me.
Mm-hmm.
And an opening happened within me, and I started to see. I guess the big thing was I couldn't judge anything. It took me to a place of non-judgment. Here I'm a Canadian boy in Europe, and going from culture to culture every 3 days, moving around on a train. And I realized I can't judge these people. I don't know their history. I don't know their culture. I don't know what's right or wrong or socially acceptable here. And instead of judging, I just stood in this place of just being present. And through that, it took me to this deep spiritual opening of just accepting all that is in this presence of what's arising. And I had my first kind of breakthrough after my sister's death. I felt that opening and connection to spirit that I'd always felt before. I don't know what it was, I'll be honest with you. I just felt an opening and a connectedness to all things. And then through that process, just really connecting with all the people in my program. I know there was like factions within, like, where I studied with different groups of people, but I wanted to be everyone's friend, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to get to know everyone and see everyone's beauty and truth within them. But coming back home to Calgary after being there for 6 months or whatnot, that was like culture shock, like being a European culture with urban design and beautiful
Mm-hmm.
architecture and history, and coming back to Calgary, where that's a walking culture. You don't have a car, you walk. And here,
Mm-hmm.
like, a lot of times, not even a sidewalk to walk on.
No.
So, and just a culture shock, and then going into a deep, dark night of the soul after that, and really questioning the meaning of existence. Like, what is the meaning of existence? Um, what is the nature of existence? Like, and just being in this dark place of meaninglessness, of pure relativity. Any point of view I took, you could find truth or falsehood in that perspective, and living in this kind of place of ultimate relativity, which is really, really difficult. And then I found an author named Ken Wilber at that time, and I read a book called, I forget what it was called now, it's so long ago. One of his first ones, I'll have to remember the name. No Boundary, maybe it's called. No, it's something else. Spectrum of Consciousness.
Okay.
Spectrum of Consciousness, many, many years ago. And he had a little section in there talking about non-duality, about going back to this sense of perceiving, about the self and apprehending objects. And through this understanding non-duality with my mind, I was able to step off of this understanding and have an ascension experience and have a union with God, you could say, or enlightenment experience or a peak experience,
Mm-hmm.
where you as a raindrop drops into the ocean and becomes the ocean, and you experience the fullness of existence. So from that point, so I've kind of worked backwards, I guess. From then, I started to seek God.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew, well, what is this? This is what I've been seeking. This is my true home. Everything makes sense. And then when you come out of that experience and come back into your normal life, it's very, very difficult because you're within you, you're resonating a truth. You're resonating with the inherent nature of existence, but yet everything is operating contrary to that. Like we're killing each other in wars, we're backstabbing our neighbor,
Mm-hmm.
everyone's climbing over top of each other in the corporate world, and like where is this natural resonance that exists, this oneness? And you see glimpses of it. There's definitely beauty everywhere around us, and you see, and that's what we all gravitate to, this kindness and this beauty in the goodness, and we all have it, and I think from there the search began,
Mm-hmm.
which is a whole other kind of story, and another other problems arise. So I don't know if I should leave it there or keep going. Like,
No, no, no. Keep going. That's amazing. I want to ask you
yeah.
one question though about when you you had these awakenings. Were you speaking to anyone in those moments that could give you answers, or were you just stumbling around as a kid, being like, "Oh, I'll try this, I'll try that"? Like, did you have anyone who was what's the word, like mentoring you, or anyone you could call? Like, I say that because I have people in my life like yourself or like Marcy or Rich or of all the other people I deal with spiritually that when I have a problem, I send them an email. Like I couldn't imagine this walk just looking around at stuff. What was that experience like?
I mean, mostly it was on my own. My aunt, though, we were really, really close, and we have good, great conversations about this. And her partner, we'd always, that was kind of more in my mid 20s, or even after these experiences happened. I think we came together and realized, hey, we have a common interest here, and we spent a lot of time talking about this stuff. So that was a really great relief, just to speak a dialogue with someone
Mm-hmm.
who understands it that's often all you need to make you feel normal and to feel real. But before that, it was just really a struggle in the dark, to be honest with you, just having openings and experiences. It's not like I had them all the time. I was a
Mm-hmm.
pretty normal guy, to be honest with you, more normal than not. And it just, but within me, I always had this, for whatever reason, these openings and these experiences, and I think they're quite common, to be honest with you. People have them on different levels. There's different levels of awakening and different levels of experience I've learned since then. And these tend to be like peak experiences. We're kind of peaking, we're peaking into them, um, and then we come out of them. It doesn't mean I'm enlightened because I had
Mm-hmm.
an enlightenment experience. It doesn't mean I'm enlightened now. Like we're joking that before this, my team Montreal Canadiens lost Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final yesterday, and I was
No.
we're in like you can't imagine. I wasn't too enlightened in that moment when they let a goal in with zero point 0.3 seconds left. But that's life, and to be human. And that, I think people really don't understand that is we have awakenings. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean you're special. It doesn't mean you're that much more evolved than you were. You have a taste of something that informs you to work towards, to grow and develop, and to be hopefully embody and become, you know. And this is all on the human spectrum of experience, and we're all open to this as human beings. And go ahead.
Can you speak more, Wade, about? I'm just like it's banging around in my brain now. You said that there's a spectrum of what did you say? There was a a spectrum of awakening, is what you said.
Mhm.
What do you mean by that? Because like I've never heard it explained like that, and I assumed that all of the awakening and moments I had in my life, I assumed there was just sort of one level. Like here, you can have a thought that's going to blow your mind, and you can pursue it, or you can't, and then you come down out of it.
Yeah.
There are different levels to having those experiences.
Yeah, and I'm a bit rusty on this. Maybe one of the future podcasts we can really delve deeply into it.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is, what I found is there's not a lot of great writing about this. There is some. And again, I'll go back to Ken Wilber. He's kind of the guru in a lot of this stuff that really opened my doors and gave me the academic kind of understanding of a lot of this stuff. But he's grounded in other people as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, like there's different levels of awakening that correspond with your level of development or level of maturity
Mm-hmm.
consciously, and they're kind of more fuller and deeper, fuller and deeper. I mean, generally speaking, this is doing us kind of a disservice, but I would say, just giving some of my experiences, like an experience of, you could experience kind of an inherent oneness or experience the suchness or beingness within this moment, kind of experience almost through your heart center, I think. and being totally eminent, like the eminent aspect of spirit that's present all around us, we can have an awakening to that. Um, Now, is that enlightenment? Well, for some people, yes, right? But there's different kind of forms of that. There's people that have this type of union with nature.
Hmm.
It's often called nature mysticism, where they're pulled outside of themselves and they kind of have this kind of maybe oneness experience with the physical nature around them, um, which what I'd say would be happen before the first experience I said in terms of the spectrum.
Hmm.
And then there's experiences of ascension, where consciousness actually ascends to the source of existence, kind of like what I spoke about earlier.
Hmm.
You actually feel your consciousness moving out of your body and ascending up, 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 up to a point where you become one with all things, a source of existence. Some people call it emptiness, some people call it spirit. You can call it whatever you want, but it's the same thing in your experience. Then ultimately, there's an experience where I think it's called Sahaj. I'll get back to another. We'll focus another or podcast on this, but
Hmm.
the experience where you experience pure non-duality, where you experience the eminence of spirit and the physical aspects of reality as one. And it's basically you see within all things that are arising that all things are just a spontaneous manipulation or radiance of spirit. All
Hmm.
physical form is just spirit arising, staying, and passing away. But you're experiencing that as an inherent oneness in this moment, and that's kind of one of the final experiences. And then you can step off all of it, where they call it like unconditional nirvikalpa samadha, where you can step off of you're so evolved and transformed, where you literally you transcend all realms and all world, and you just exist inherently for as oneness, I guess you could say. That's kind of like the final, and that's often what they talk about in a lot of, I think, Buddhist stuff, becoming fully enlightened and stepping off of existence. And the last thing I'll say about that is we can have peak experiences of these things,
Hmm.
touch them and experience them, but we haven't did the transcendence within our everyday life to be able to maintain that or stabilize it or exist fully as that. So that's kind of a real broad
Hmm.
kind of look at things. But go ahead.
Well, I'm just, that's super interesting you said that, because as you were talking, I was thinking about my own experiences, and 100% and I just assumed that an enlightening experience was just it's all in the same sort of plane. But you're right. As you were going through those, like my enlightening moments consciously as a child were different from psychedelics, are different from shamanic journeying, are different from when I go out in nature. I just never considered that before, but it would stand to reason that there are different levels, there are different things happening, there are different things going on.
And one thing I will see, psychedelic experience. I mean, those are real experiences, right? They may have a
Hmm.
different type of flavor to them, but you can have deep spiritual experience through we call it plant spirit medicine.
Hmm.
You know? And often that's a doorway for a lot of people, and it breaks them through into the spirit realms. But the problem is if you become over reliant on that, then you're dependent on
100%.
something as a vehicle, and it doesn't. And spirit doesn't work that way. You got to do it yourself ultimately, and you can use things to kind of help and facilitate, but like anything, if you keep using and using and using, it just wears out and you get nowhere. You become addicted or depressed. So these things can be a vehicle and they can open you up to these things, and they are real, these experiences. And very often people have their first spiritual experiences through plant spirit medicine.
It's funny you say that about about using them incorrectly. And my favorite band on the planet is Tool. I don't know if you're familiar with Tool, but they sing about just mostly consciousness and spirituality in this metal band. But the lead singer of Tool there was an interview I heard in high school, and he was talking about psychedelics, and he said people shouldn't just be doing them, exactly what you said. Like, you shouldn't just be doing them, you shouldn't just be doing them all the time, because it's spiritual robbery. You have no idea why you're there, you have no idea what they're trying to say, and you have no foundation to stand on. So get yourself strong in other practices, and once in a while try something, as opposed to, like you said, the more you use it, it just starts to wear out. It's like a tool.
Mhm.
Can you keep speaking, Wade, about where we ended off there, where you said that was your journey to that moment, and then your next sort of step in spirituality was another story? I'm super interested to hear the rest of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the next step is trying to have that same experience again, and that's like the ultimate trick or the ultimate trap.
Hmm.
Ultimate trap is the right word. where we have this awakening and we feel bliss and we feel oneness and we feel at homeness and we feel true freedom to its fullest extent. That's what our nature is, right? And we
Hmm.
crave that, and that's why we're always seeking that. We're always seeking to relax. We're always seeking to go on a holiday. We're always seeking these moments of freedom. You know, even in countries, people, we live in a beautiful country, Canada, and people come here for freedom.
Hmm.
You know, because they often live in countries where there isn't freedom. We're lucky we haven't experienced that, and that just opens us up to deeper freedom, you know. So the big thing is, once you've from my experience anyway, once you have an experience like that, you want to have it again. It's
Hmm.
like, you know, that's the ultimate drug. You want it again and again and again. But and you chase it and you search for it and you keep trying to do the same things over and over again. You read hundreds and hundreds of books about how to do it, and you meditate and you go to meditation retreats and you do everything and nothing happens.
Yep.
And then what I realized many years later, reading an author, that this is the common trap that we fall into, that we want to recreate an experience that we had. That's not the point of the experience. The point of the experience is to have that experience. It's like all the factors of your development have come together and opened a door or a gateway, and you have that experience, and you move to a higher level of consciousness in a sense. So you've kind of you're here before, now you're here,
Hmm.
and this experience is kind of the doorway to get to this level, the higher level. So what going backwards isn't what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to
Hmm.
keep going forward, and growing and developing to have the next experience, whatever that may be. To be honest with you, to be
Hmm.
whatever that may be, and that was a major breakthrough for me to realize that I'm not meant to have that experience again. Maybe I am, but very likely maybe not. And that's not the point now. My point is to live life and keep moving forward and see what's in store for me next. And it is a bit of mystery. And I know we talk about certain types of experiences spiritually, but that's just a broad stroke. There's probably infinite the type of experiences we can have. And then you have male and female experience. I'm sure it's quite different in certain extents, that we're stepping off from a female versus a male, or vice versa, right? Ultimately, the experience is probably the same, but maybe the way we get there may be a bit different because we have a different resonance within us. Um, so, and then in terms of, once I come to terms with not to chase this experience anymore, um, I started to live, to be
Hmm.
honest with you. And I'll tell you another funny story. I remember, because I was doing Tibetan Buddhism at that time, and we had a lama here from, well, India, but originally from Tibet. And I was struggling with this, like you said, talking about people. I work up the nerve to talk to someone finally about my experience, because I've been struggling with it and my life wasn't going anywhere, and I had this profound experience and I was starting to doubt it.
Hmm.
And so often we start doubting this. Was I crazy? Was that even real? You know. So I worked up the nerve to have a private conversation with this lama, Tibetan lama. I told him my experience. He looks at me and he says, "Forget about it." Excuse me? Forget about that. You're the llama. Come on.
Yeah.
And I was kind of pissed off, I'll be honest with you.
Of course you would be. It's easy for you to say, holy man. I just saw God. Tell me more about it.
Yeah. So, I left like, well, I couldn't figure this out. And then later I found out what he meant is what I was getting. Don't worry about this experience. Forget about it. If you keep thinking about it and worrying about it, it's just a trap. So
Hmm.
he was telling me the answer I found, I think, quite a few years later in a book somewhere. There's obviously cultural differences there in terms of getting the meaning across. But what he was saying was right. I need to
Hmm.
forget about that experience, because that's going to hold me back, and I'm not going to evolve. So it's funny how these things come together down the road.
It's very funny, but what's funny is like in my own experience, like you clarified that for me not too long ago. It was maybe a month ago. You and I were speaking about this, and you said to me, um, don't hold on to that experience, because once that experience is over, you're standing on the shoulders of that experience, and the next ones are going to happen. And it was one of those moments where someone says something to you, and your brain's like, "Oh, of course that would. Like, I'm not going to get that again. I'm a whole new person." And I have a question for you along that line of thinking too, because I say this to everybody, and I don't know if it's true, but I say this in passing all the time. Do you believe that it's possible to, like, as you become enlightened, I don't want to say enlightened, it's an arrogant word, as you start having these experiences and you start evolving spiritually, do you believe it's possible to go backwards? Like, can you see behind the veil and be like, nope, I didn't see that? Do you know what I'm saying?
I think we can absolutely we can regress. Like, as a I don't think as one aspect of us is evolving. Like we have multiple intelligences, multiple emotional levels, these sorts of things, and we are growing on different levels. We have many streams of consciousness in a sense, right, that are
Hmm.
all at different places. So maybe our spiritual stream of development gets is quite high, but maybe our intellectual is medium, maybe our moral spirit or moral line of development is low, you
Hmm.
know. What happens then? We have very high intelligence but low morality. Well, look at Hitler. Maybe he was a
Yeah.
very brilliant man, but he had low morality, and that's what can happen. That's why we can create these people can create or be created or exist in these sorts of way. So in the sense,
Hmm.
and you also have tension. So all of a sudden, your spiritual line of development takes a big jump forward, right?
Hmm.
Everything else stays the same. Maybe that causes a disturbance within you. Maybe it causes a bit of regression. Maybe the rest of the lines don't want to be pulled up. Maybe they rebel. And that's kind of a funny thing to say, but and my wife would say sometimes I'm a lot worse than I used to be. As I get older, I get into bad habits. From where I'm from or from my father, they settle in.
Hmm.
And we get kind of regimented in that. And so I think it's important to think it's not a straight line of development, because we have these multiple intelligences, multiple um, parts of our consciousness that are growing and evolving kind of independently and codependently of one another.
Hmm.
They're all at different levels. Can one a level drop? I don't know. I mean, that's what we talk about peak experience. At a
Yeah.
moment when we have a peak experience, yeah, our spiritual awakening is very, very high, and then maybe it comes back down, but it's not as low as it was before, right?
Hmm.
Because now we're informed of that experience. So I'm not sure if that's answering your question or not.
It does. I suppose I'm speaking to that because like I'm having those. I'm in the middle of those issues now spiritually,
Yeah.
and it helps. Like I'm a jujitsu player and a boxer, and so playing those games sort of sets me up for understanding spirituality better. So with like when I do workshops with you in particular, it's this is when I have these issues. Is like I come to these 20 people who think the same way that I do, and then you're conducting the choir, and you have this amazing weekend, and then I'm irritated when the rest of my weekends aren't the same thing.
Mm.
But I really feel like the games I play set me up for these instances of like, your coach says, here, you learn this, and now go off into the world and practice it. And once you've practiced that for a while, come and do another one. But like my brain really does struggle with that. Like, you when all the embers are together, the fire's burning so hot, and then when you're off by yourself, you're like, oh, I want to get back there.
Yeah.
It's one of those things.
A lot of it's the power of the community, the power of the circle that we're creating. It creates a deeper power that opens us up, allows us to practice a lot more easily.
Hmm.
Um, other thing to consider, I think, is, and when I teach, I really try to let people know that you need to trust the experience you're having this weekend. Don't expect it's going to be what you think it's going to be. Don't expect it's going to be more profound than the last time you're here or with another instructor or whatnot. What you have to do is you're engaging in a spiritual process, and you're opening yourself up to that process, and you need to see what spirit wants to teach you this weekend. It's not what you think you need to, what the spirit wants to show you, because you stepped into this sacred space. And it can be very difficult for some people. Some people think nothing happens some weekends. That's not a bad thing.
Hmm.
You got to explore and see what's happening for you this weekend for nothing to happen, and what's happening in the nothingness, and what's it pointing you towards, and what's underlying that. And it's just, as we're so goal focused, which is a good and bad thing in our culture. And if we have a goal going into a teaching or a learning, and we don't receive it, we think we've failed or we've done something wrong. That's not the case. We need to pay attention to what's happening to us and learn, what is the teaching here for me today. If you take that to every, I think, situation of your life, like, what am I here to learn? What
Hmm.
can I learn in this moment? you know it really opens you up. It really allows you to grow very quickly spiritually and as a human being, rather than judging and pushing people away and typecasting and these sorts of things.
Hmm.
I really believe life is the great teacher, and life is all things. Life is experiences that I have. Life is the people that I meet, and there's a teaching in everything if I pay attention to it. Now, do I do that every day and every moment of my life? No, it's very difficult. But when I'm having a hard time, I try to remind myself of that. Is, what's the teaching here? What's the teaching here? What can
Hmm.
I learn? How do I grow? And life is hard enough as it is, to be honest with you. And if we see it as a teaching and you don't always have to go to some guru to be taught. Life
Mhm.
is teaching you. And I think when you go back to where people teaching me through my formative years, well, no, but life was always teaching me. Life was my teacher, you
Mhm.
know, and I was a good student, I think, in a lot of ways because I was listening.
Mhm.
And I think we all seek to have this guru in our life to teach us and to transform us and have that dialogue. It's probably not going to happen. You know,
Mhm.
what I mean? Um, Even when you read a great book and you want to share it with someone, most people don't want to read it. You know,
Yeah.
when you buy books for people, no one reads them.
Yep.
You realize, well, shit, come on, this is great. It'll transform your life. But but they're at a different spot in their life, and they don't. That's not what they need to read right now. That's what I needed to read. You want to share it with them. That's a nice thing to do. So, uh, unfortunately, the spiritual path is very alone at a lot of times,
Mhm.
and I think it's being comfortable with that and not thinking that, and to trusting the spirit is always present and is always teaching you and not losing faith in that. And if we can do that, that is quite profound, to be
Mhm.
honest with you.
That's the and sort of what you said is like I'm fortunate too in that I'm my dad is an amazing learner.
Mm,
My mom is as well. My mom's very educated, but my dad is a professional learning man. That's all he does is learn stuff. He was a he was a cop, so he never went to school, but like he was constantly reading, he was constantly evolving and he was learning all the time. Like it was just like consuming. And it's because of that that I have a real hard time with like what you're saying is like learning laterally.
mm,
I feel like I need to make these learning jumps where you like you say you go to a if you go to a seminar weekend with yourself, sometimes the lessons are lateral and they're more important than the leap because
mm.
it's bringing you up more to this level, but there's still this thing in my brain that's like I'm looking for like I'm just like plagued by the leaps. It's like I need to know more of this. I need to know more, and sometimes sharpening that stone on that level is a difficult thing for me. Do you have those? Do you ever have those problems anymore shamanically where you're like, do you have to fight yourself from saying like you don't need to make leaps, Wade? You're in this place. It's going fine. Just carry on.
Yeah, I think it's more about the stage of my life. I'm a dad with three kids, so
Mhm.
it's I don't have the time to really think about a lot of these things. So that was painful to go from someone totally focused on spirituality to find spirituality, to totally focus on it, to find the freedoms and liberation through that, to love reading about it and learning about it, to practice it, and then having kids, which was tough, because in terms of your spiritual practice, because you don't have the time now.
Mhm.
Having kids is wonderful. It's a spiritual experience in and of itself. But there came a point when I realized, I mean, one thing was happening for me too, as I was kind of, when you get, for me as a male anyway, spirituality was kind of pulling me away from um, the world around me. I was becoming more insular
Mhm.
because there wasn't a lot of people I could resonate with, like, or wouldn't, I couldn't like just have conversations openly about a lot of stuff I was experiencing. People were kind of looking at me like I was crazy, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
So you become more insular, you get more into books, into yourself and into solitude. What I found that I wasn't engaging in people around me, the community around me like I used to do. And I was quite gregarious in a lot of ways. And then I realized when I started coaching hockey again, it was a tough step to step into that role because you're kind of a leader, and all the parents are looking to you for guidance, and
Mhm.
also the huge responsibility on you because they want their kids to make the NHL.
Mhm.
Um, so it's pressure too.
That's a whole other conversation. We're not going to talk about hockey parents ever.
Maybe later. We'll
That's
see.
right.
uh, but in terms of where was I going with that?
Just the responsibility of coaching kids, and these people are
I,
looking to you.
Yeah, and I remember just how I was having a hard time just relating with people. Like it was weird for me. Like I'm someone who can relate with people and have a good time with people and have fun, but I was having a hard time connecting with people, or I wanted to stand back in the shadows. And I
Hmm.
realized that was really a product of just being too insular for too long. And I realized this was a great spiritual, not awakening, but a spiritual process I was starting to step into. It was pulling me back into life.
Hmm.
I was able to immerse myself in spirit and the ideas of spirit. And now I was being pulled, life was pulling me back into life, part of the community. And I
Hmm.
realized now I'm realizing how important that is. And really, so I see the last, whatever, 10 or 15 years as more as a role of service And that's such an important aspect of spirituality too, is to serve,
Mhm.
to serve others. And liberation can come through service, because it's an aspect of being selfless and of transcending our ego and putting our own egotistical or narcissistic kind of motivations ahead of others. We're helping others, being altruistic in our motivations. And when I realized that, it was helpful, but it was still hard. It took me a long time to immerse myself in the community again and people. And like on the playground, I kind of want to just go stand off and read a book, or do. But now you kind of got to chat with parents and whatnot. And so that helped me. So I'm kind of seeing this stage. I'm not fighting it. I'm just kind of going with it.
Mhm.
Sometimes I wonder, well, am I kind of just, am I growing anymore? And I don't know. Maybe I'm not. But I see it as I'm practicing service now. I'm helping others. I'm being a more bigger part of my community, and I'm learning that stage, because that wasn't where I was headed, and it's pulled me back into life.
Mhm.
Which I think, as if we talk about different types of enlightenment experiences again, you have to embrace form. Emptiness has to embrace form. Spirit has to embrace form, and there's a oneness in that. And that's one of the inherent problems of spirituality. When you start to have spiritual awakenings, you want to push form away. You want
Mhm.
to push your life away,
Yep.
and you can't get to the next stage of enlightenment in that sense, where you have to find the inherent oneness in all things. And that's why I think Jesus would say, the kingdom of heaven is here now. That's what he meant. He could see it. He was experiencing it, this oneness. He said, treat your neighbor as yourself, because he saw the neighbor as himself. We are one spirit arising. Maybe we're having this conversation, but it's still spirit arising.
Mhm.
And what's the action that comes out of this knowledge and experience? It's love. Love. People often say God is love. I don't think God is love. I think that's the ultimate action of God. The ultimate action of God is love. God is God. God is oneness. That is, God transcends love, to be honest with you. But in this realm, where there's subjects and objects, and there's people around, that is the inherent action of God, love. Because you treat all aspects of yourself equally and with care and concern, because we're all one. But these are the evolved people that are having that moment-to-moment experience.
Oh.
Jesus or Buddha or whoever, right? They're not thinking this or trying to like fake it till you make it. They're experiencing the oneness inherently of all things that are manifesting in front of them. And that's kind of a deep, deep level. I tend to always think awakening is way off somewhere else, right? Well, that's an aspect, that's a type of enlightenment experience, but ultimately you got to come back. You got to embrace your life. You got to live it. You got to roll your sleeves up. You got to be ground down, like, you know. And that's a tough experience, to be ground down. But we all are, and I think I think it's a spiritual process that's happening to us, where the things that we don't need anymore are getting their ugly face out there, and life's grinding it down, smoothing it
Mhm.
out, smoothing it out. And it's painful. But as we do that, we start to resonate more with our inherent nature.
Mhm.
And we start to treat people with more care and concern and compassion around us. And so I'm kind of losing my thought now.
No,
But
no,
yeah,
that's so those moments you were saying, like where you leave your body when you hear something. Like I've been having that moment listening to you speak for the last 5 minutes. Like it's so I'm having a hard time even like gathering the words to ask the question, because I've never heard what you've said before. So I'm not even sure what direction to go with it. Like it's so interesting to me, the layers of spirituality that human consciousness is aware of. But like, where do you learn this stuff, Wade? Like, how can you learn these things other than having conversations like this? Like, where?
we have to find the books and the right people, I think. Otherwise, you're having experiences and you don't know what they mean.
Mm-hmm.
You have no clue. And what you really have is attention after.
Mm-hmm.
You have an awakening and a sense of freedom that that's true within you, but then all these tensions are around you in the way society is right now. That really isn't about freedom, and it isn't really about respecting others fully and equality. And and I mean, it's become, we're really evolving quickly as a society, and a lot of this is starting to really emerge now. And I think, man, I see so much potential
Mm-hmm.
in human society. I always see the potential in it. I know people are always looking at the negative side of it, and I did environmental work for many years, and I studied environmental philosophy and all these things. it's quite depressing if you look at how we treat ourselves and we treat the environment and these
Mm-hmm.
sorts of things, because we're not thinking about the long-term consequences, right? Um, but the issue is when we start to take responsibility, when we start to look at the hope in things, we start to look at our
Mm-hmm.
potential we have to create. Man, what we can do as humans is going to be unbelievable. And what the care and regard and concern we can have for our earth, for all beings of this earth, is amazing when we get there. And even like it's just going to be mind blowing, like what's going to happen, like because we think our inherent nature is consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and all things come from consciousness. All form is birthed from consciousness. That's what God essentially is this inherent source of existence, this oneness, this unmanifested oneness, which is pure consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Now that seems pretty mundane, but it's not. And so if that's our source, well, anything's really possible because
Mm-hmm.
everything's one. Talk about time and speed and all these things. Well, you could potentially be anywhere at any point instantaneously, or at all points instantaneously. Um, so I mean, in terms of like say physics, if they really started to get into this, like holy man, I think maybe they're starting to scrape on it. But a lot of these scientists are so immersed in the physical aspect of reality, they're really missing the boat at our true potential. Now the
Yep.
question is how does it cross over the physical and the spiritual? That I don't totally understand, and that's maybe I never will, or maybe it's not meant to be understood, which becomes a problem. um, but I see so much potential in as we grow and evolve as humans, as a society, like what our potential is, and it brings tears to my eyes in a positive way, what we could become. And we tend to focus on the negative as people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look at the destruction we're doing. Look at the greed. Look at the militaries that are moving around this world, and what are they up to? Well, it's not good, obviously,
For sure.
but there's so much beauty and potential if we start to look within and start to realize their potential. But it starts with individuals. You have to do it individually. I can't save the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing we tend to do is we all want to run out there and fix the big problems. We
Mm-hmm.
forget to fix ourselves first. And that's the problem. Until we fix ourselves, until we heal ourselves, our potential to help others is minimal.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why I ultimately got into shamanism. I think we maybe talked about this at one point, is I did all this meditation, I did all these things, and like going back to having a spiritual awakening, nothing was happening. And I realized,
Mm-hmm.
well, it's obviously blocks within me. My feeling blocks, I don't know what they are. Why aren't I evolving? And that's what often brings people to say shamanism, because they
Mm-hmm.
need healing. They need healing. They're
Yep.
trying to evolve spiritually, and it's a profound system for healing. And so a lot of my wounds, a lot of my scars, a lot of my blocks were been able to be healed through the shamanic work that I've engaged in over the years. So now I'm not really seeking like I once did. Is
Yeah.
that a product of that? Probably quite a bit, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, no, like I just as you're saying that, it's funny because if I was telling you, I've been sober for this is my 10th year of sobriety, and I I was like diligent, and going to a psychologist. Like the first couple of years of my sobriety were pretty intense, like 3-4 times a week for 3 years going to a psychologist. And I cleared a lot of stuff up in my life. I was a moron, so it wasn't hard to fix a life when you're a dummy. But it's crazy that the shamanic work that I've been able to do has helped me so far past anything that's like psychology brought me up to a place where I would listen to shamanism, right? It built me up, it got rid of some things I didn't need. But when I look at them sort of like dollar for, and I don't want to say dollar for dollar, but like literally like apples to apples, it's unbelievable what my own spiritual practice through shamanism, like you say, like here's a methodology, try this, fix yourself. It's unbelievable the moments that I've had on my own, like this winter even I was working on a lot of things in myself, and I was journeying on the same thing for quite a few nights in a row. And the moment when I sort of had this awakening, I had this like breakthrough, and I just collapsed and was bawling on the floor, like just was weeping on the floor. And my wife came upstairs and she's like, "Are you okay?" It was one of the greatest moments I've ever had. just sitting there on I journey on this little Japanese meditation stool, like sitting up, and everything's all falling apart, and I'm ugly crying. But it was like there's this profound moment that I wouldn't have gotten, I believe, if anyone else was with me. Like it was so singular that it was like it needed to happen in that moment, and it was, yeah, man. I can't. I don't know. I've never had any other profound experiences other than with a psychologist, like getting myself better, or by myself shamanically. And it's just, yeah, it's completely changed the way that I look at everything. Like you can't, you say you're talking about it was getting hard for you to not to communicate, but like as you start to evolve, you become a totally different person. And like, man, my peer group is shrinking in a hurry, and I'm fine with it. But it's like the things I'm speaking about to, like I've told you before, but like when I do jujitsu, when I'm boxing, when we any sort of mixed martial arts stuff, this is all I speak about to my people afterwards. And half of them think I'm crazy, which I'm fine with. They know
Yeah.
who I am, but the other, they're interested in it as well. But it's and as your peer group starts to shrink, it is such an isolated feeling, right? It's a great feeling that you have personally that, like, look, I'm evolving, I'm growing, but phew, there's nobody else around here right now.
But there really is, though. I think it's the language we choose to use, right? Because we're all human and we're all struggling through the same things. We're all reaching for the same things, you know.
Mhm.
It's when we start to label things, you know, and this is the problem with religion, I think, is if we start saying my religion's better than your religion, and then we
Yeah.
have a fight, and they're not, no one religion's better than another religion. They're equal, you know. They're
Hmm.
just different paths and different means, and they've arisen in different cultures at different times. They focus on different elements, but it's all good, you know. And in terms of if we can get behind these labels and just talk about the experience and talk about what we're struggling with and talk about the awakenings and the openings, well, it's all common ground.
Hmm.
We're all reaching for these things. We're all struggling with these things. It's just certain people, when you start talking about spirituality, they go, oh, let's keep that away from me, you're a nut, but everyone's spiritual. It's a part
Hmm.
of your nature,
It
you know
is.
so that's the thing. And you'd be shocked with it. We're all struggling with these things. And I remember having conversations with my dad. Even he's probably the least spiritual person I ever met, but yet he's having the same types of thoughts and ideas, and we're having conversations. As long as you don't label it,
For
you
sure.
talk about it, right? We're all having these experiences, and that connects us as humans, our commonality and our struggles. So I think that's important to think about. So even though it feels like our peer group's shrinking at times, we're still connected. And there's
Hmm.
times when they come back and we come back and we grow. And so keep the door open.
It is, no, for sure. And I'm so thankful for like the community that I do have. And it's a strange one. Like when I try and explain to people that how open to spirituality the MMA community is, and people look at me like, you're joking. Like, why would anyone be open to that? But it's like this community fundamentally is based on action reaction. Do this, this will happen for you. That's everything we learn. If you do this, this will happen. Do this, that will happen. This will happen. So it's crazy. You sit down with a bunch of meatheads after you've been knocking it out of each other all evening, and you're like, I was at a spiritual retreat this weekend. And a bunch of these guys are all like, really? How was it? What happened? So it's nice to have those connections, but again, like you say, it is still a, I don't know. It feels like where I'm at right now, it's like a lonely existence, sort of building speed or like learning more about myself or polishing the edge more.
Oh, I get it totally. But the thing is, there's a spirituality in what you're doing in boxing and all these things. Like my dad was a big hunter, like a
Hmm.
huge hunter. That's all he thought about. We had a lot of lands. We take care. We had the land was more for the wild animals than for us, to be honest with you. We couldn't drive in certain areas at certain times of the year, and you leave this crop for the animals to eat. You can't.
I
And
know I know exactly who your dad is already.
and then and I was given a gun, like, hey,
Yeah.
you're 14, it's time to start hunting. Here's your gun. I was like, I
Yeah.
don't want I don't want to kill things. That was my nature. My dad was the opposite. But I remember being drug out hunting with him all the time, and I gave it up. Like it never resonated with me. I didn't like killing things. And I remember when I was a bit older, I thought maybe I should learn a bit more about this. Like I should. Like I'm eating the meat. Like it's kind of hypocritical that I have this freezer full of elk meat, and yet I don't, I don't
Hmm.
partake in the animal, taking the animal. That's kind of hypocritical. And I was a vegetarian for a long time. I tried that. But then we always were such respectful hunters. My dad, he would hunt. Some years he wouldn't get an animal. He could have taken 10, or not 10. He
Yeah.
get one a year, but he had
Yeah.
that opportunity. But he'd wait for the right one in the right situation. So he was a very. So I really kind of really maybe wonder what's going on here, because most guys go out and shoot it, they start shooting whatever they anything moves, they start shooting. Where my dad was, you go out every day, go out in the morning get up at 5 or whatever, go out in the morning, and you go out every evening, every day, every day. And what you're a bad hunter, why aren't you getting something? Well, you just don't shoot, you got to wait for the right one. So I started to learn that, and it started to maybe wonder what's going on here. So I started hunting with him again, and realizing, well, this is actually a spiritual experience for him. He's
Hmm.
actually having a spiritual, it's like meditation twice a day for him,
Yep.
because when he's hunting, you can't be thinking. You're like experiencing every part of nature. Like, where are the tracks at? Which way is the wind blowing? Is there rain coming in? Where's the light at? What does that sound? How do we move around here? And you're utterly 100% present. Like, it's better than meditation, because
Hmm.
you're so in this present moment. I realize my dad's actually meditating twice a day, every day, every hunting season. And that's why he loves it. He doesn't
Yeah.
even know it. That's why he's doing this, because he wants to engage spiritually and be in a spiritual state of consciousness.
Hmm.
And for him, I guess taking the animal wasn't a big deal. It was being in this spiritual state of consciousness. So it gave me a whole other perspective of hunting to begin with, and many other things now. I
Hmm.
judge things very easily. And I'm realizing this is why we do this. Now, there's an inherent negativity towards this, like, say, for something like gambling. Well, gambling is very addictive because it puts you fully
Hmm.
present. You're fully present. And very often people are even probably worried about the money. It's like, what's the next card? What's the next
Hmm.
card? Or is that seven dropping down? So it's pulling you into that kind of pseudo spirituality, being totally present.
Hmm.
We feed off that. We need that. We're craving that, because that's what we're all looking for in our life. Unfortunately, these become very bad addictions and ruin people's lives, to be honest with you. This is why that's one of the natures of addiction. It
Hmm.
pulls you into this kind of spiritual state of consciousness, which becomes kind of a pseudo spirituality, because you're focused on something else rather than the actual experience of the moment. You're trying to see an outcome happen every
Hmm.
time.
That's
So, food for thought.
that's so interesting. I want to talk about hunting for a sec, but that's so interesting what you said about gambling. I've never been a gambler, but
Yeah.
my a girlfriend I had when I was younger, she's from Canada, but she went to UNLV, so she studied. She was an accountant out of the University of Las Vegas. So I was in Vegas all the time, and I was never a gambler. I've always found things to do in Vegas. But I remember walking. I love lights and sounds. I'm one of those people. Like, if there's like a bell dinging and lights flashing, like, I want to be around it. But I would just sit in casinos and drink soda water. But it always blew my mind that people were sitting at these tables and just slinging money down. But I didn't understand it till you just said that. Like, that's exactly what they're doing. Like, they're fooling themselves into this moment of here now, into, like you say, like, is it what's turning over? Am I going to get an ace? Are you going to drop a seven? Like, what am I rolling? Like, that's so crazy you said that. That's exactly what was happening with all those people.
And the problem is they're focused on a reward, right? So that
Yeah.
screws the whole process up, because they're being present, and it's like a spiritual kind of a like awareness, right?
Hmm.
A very maybe low level, but they're totally present, and they're totally present in this moment. But they're searching for a reward or an outcome, which really obscures everything, and you can't go very deep with that at all. And so I call it like a pseudo spiritual state, in a sense.
You're very right. And I want to loop back to what you said about hunting,
Yeah,
because I still do have a hard time with it, not hunting itself. I grew up in a small town in Alberta, same
yeah,
thing. I don't personally hunt.
yeah.
I have guns. I shoot a bow constantly, but I've never pulled the trigger at an animal. I just don't. I'm not interested in it. We raise beef though, and so we slaughter our beef. So that's another thing. But I grew up. All of my friends who hunt are reverent, real hunters. Like, they're real men of, like, conservation. Of, you do this properly. This is a respectful thing. And so as I got older and, I started backpacking or I'd moved to cities and I'd have more and more friends that were vegetarian or they were against hunting, it always blew my mind because the people that they were describing to me that were hunters was nobody that I knew. I
Yeah.
didn't know any of these people. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like if you met any of my friends, you'd understand them as something different. Like they're the most, they respect nature so much more than the average person I know. Like I can't condemn them for what they're doing. Like I suppose if they're choosing to take that animal, that's between them and their God. But
Mhm.
everything else they're doing is so respectful and reverent. Like they're not running around like Yosemite Sam just
Yeah.
smashing off shots, right? And it was always so confusing. It still is confusing to me, right? Because I tried. I was vegetarian for about a year and a half, and it was great for me for a while. I felt great, and then I by the end my body was not enjoying it. I had to go back to eating meat. But I've always been. It's always been a confusing thing to me about and I suppose I understand it, but that there's no split in it. Like hunting was the original political argument to me. Either you were for hunting or you were against it. And if you're a hunter and you meet someone that's against it, they're a stupid hippie. And if you meet somebody who is a hunter and you don't hunt, like they're just a monster from a Disney movie that's smashing at Bambi's mom. And it's so there's a really excellent podcast actually about it's by Radio Lab, and on this podcast they record I can't remember if it was a black rhino in Africa, but basically what had happened is these bull rhinos would, after they'd mate, that was it. They had one or two mating seasons, and after that, the old bulls would just try and kill young bulls because they're just trying to keep their gene pool going. And so these black rhinos, they were only left on one game farm in Africa, and so they had three bulls remaining. One bull was done breeding, but he was bigger than the rest. He's just going around killing these bulls, and so they said this species is almost extinct, and they said we need to harvest this bull that's killing them all because he's going to extinct everybody on his own. And so they auction off this hunt in at the Safari Club in Vegas. And for you can I mean imagine the person who buys that hunt, right?
Yeah.
$1 million or whatever. But the money's exclusively going to conservation after that.
Mhm.
But the podcast just follows this guy who purchased it and like the death threats he get and the both sides of the argument. Half the people are saying this is ridiculous. You can't hunt this animal, and the other part are saying like, yeah, well, you got to get rid of it to save the species. But it's a whole deeper conversation. But that podcast really resonated with me about like what you're saying, right? Like the difference of opinion that people have.
Yeah, and there's bad hunters. Let's not kid ourselves. They just shoot anything. They'll leave wound animals, not go find them. They don't hunt right.
Hmm.
I don't really hunt much still. Like I'm not a hunter.
Yeah.
Either you are or you're not. I just grew up in that environment. It's been a great teaching for me, right? Like I was
Hmm.
forced. That's not my nature. I was forced to like look into what is this, and I was forced. Like I've decided to eat meat again, and some people need to eat meat. There's no way around it. Their bodies need it, right?
Yep.
I can go either way. I can be a vegetarian or I could eat meat, and obviously, being a vegetarian, I think is a more morally conscious thing to do. There's less suffering involved with being a
Hmm.
vegetarian than being a meat eater. So it's a good
Completely.
stance if your body can handle it right. And probably eventually in the future we'll probably grow meat, you know what I mean, in a lab, so probably there'll be nothing suffering, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
um, but what I realized is for me is if I'm going to eat meat and to take an animal, that is so hard, like to see this beautiful creature, especially like for me it was elk are incredibly intelligent animals, like incredibly intelligent. You just can't go and just shoot an elk, and if you do, it's one a million chance. You got to hunt them,
Hmm.
takes days off, and especially if you're trying to get the right animal,
Hmm.
and when you do, it's like, man, do I really want to pull this trigger? Like that's a beautiful creature, I don't, and when you do, it's really hard, and it's a really tough thing to go through. And what you do, I think, if you had to go through it, or if you're on your farm and you have to slaughter a chicken or a beef or a buffalo or whatnot, it's a tough thing to do, to take a life. It really, really is, and it really humbles you, and it gives you such utter respect for these creatures, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
It gives you utter respect for life. And now for me it's like someone's wasting meat, like, oh my god, that's an animal that lived, you're throwing that in the garbage, a piece of meat, like come on, put it in the fridge or give it to someone else, give it to your dog or whatnot. But that was an animal that lived. It's like for me, seeing the value of that, it gives me so much more respect for animals and for the land and for conservation and the need for conservation, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that your friends are probably the same way. They just see, they respect this, and to do that tough process, to take a life is so hard for me anyway, that um it just gives you respect and
Mm-hmm.
reverence, to be honest with you, and it
Mm-hmm.
makes you really treat things with all those aspects of it respect, and it makes you very conscious of eating and what you're putting into your body and what waste is and these sorts of things. And again, that's not my I'm not a big hunter, and I probably never will be, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you, but it's a very interesting conversation because it brings in a whole spiritual kind of conversation as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
One.
yes, I would say being a vegetarian is more spiritually responsible than being a meat eater, and being a vegan is even more spiritually responsible because there's less suffering. The less suffering we create in the things that we eat, it's just the better it is. You know what I'm saying? And the less suffering we do in our actions, no matter what it is. What
Mm-hmm.
kind of person are you? Are you treating people with respect? Are you a hater? Do you have meanness in your heart? Are you being mean to people in this world
Mm-hmm.
out of spite? Are you trying to harm someone? Are you spiritually trying to harm someone? Are you trying to take energy? Like who are you trying to be in this world? And I think it really comes down to that. And
Mm-hmm.
and again, I'm going off on a tangent, so
No,
I'll
no,
come
no,
back
no, no.
to
That's
it.
completely because I feel the same way about like I was saying we raise beef
Yeah,
and we don't raise like we don't raise many cows. We raise cows to eat. So between
yeah,
sort of our families, our immediate family. So we have like 3 or 4 cows or 3 or 4 steers kicking around all the time. But it's so important to me, and it is to anyone I think who raises them, like how those animals live and how those animals die. It's it's an important thing to you. It becomes it's impossible to not have. They're not pets, but they're still animals that are in your stewardship.
mhm,
And their life and their quality of life and how they live it reflects on you and how you're treating them. And I know that sounds crazy to a person who knows that I'm going to slaughter those cows in the fall, but that's just what we do. But it's so important to me how they live, what they eat, how we harvest them, how they're put down. Like they're very important things. Like it's not nearly as take a club out and bonk them over the head as I think some people think it is, you know?
Well, it's very important because I did environmental agriculture for a long time, studied it in grad school, and studied this in my master's thesis a lot. I mean, there's a gradient of ethics in terms
Mm-hmm.
of the food we eat, right? So on the very bottom is mass-produced, agriculturally farmed, industrially farmed animals, like animals that are never see the day of light, that are in these like small cages, maybe they don't have much room to turn around. So that's if you're, and that's the cheapest probably food to buy, right? There's a reason why it's cheap because it's industrialized, right?
Mm-hmm.
And where you start to get into like free range, right, where you're having certain to call label something free range, it has to meet certain criteria of so much light per day, so much acres to graze on, these sorts of things. And then there's like organic, where you only can feed the animals organic feed. They
Mm-hmm.
can't be exposed to pesticides and herbicides and these sorts of things. And they have to have even more area to graze on, more light per
Mm-hmm.
space, and even how they're just like slaughtered. There's a humane aspect to it, right? And then then you get into vegetarianism and veganism and all these sorts of things. So there's a whole spectrum. It really comes down to how much suffering we're causing that conscious being. The
Mm-hmm.
less suffering we cause a conscious being, ethically, that's probably a better choice, right? But if you're someone, I have a good friend who's a vegetarian, I think for over a decade or more, and he eventually had to go back to eating meat because his body couldn't, he
Mm-hmm.
needed the meat. He was getting weak. He was getting weak, and when he started eating meat again, he became healthy again. So I mean, we're omnivores. So some of us, whatever blood type you are, you probably need meat. And just being a vegetarian isn't going to work for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I don't know. It's a very interesting conversation, but there's a wide spectrum of ethics in terms of food choices. And also there comes to economics. Sometimes I just can't afford the organic tomatoes or this
Mm-hmm.
organic that. I had to buy organic bananas this week. That's all I can afford.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I could buy everything organic, but there is maybe it's 30% more. I can't afford it, unfortunately. And
Completely.
and I don't think our world could survive today if everyone was organic. You
No,
can't produce the same production. We have too
you
many
can't.
people. And what's interesting, this is really going off on a tangent. I remember there's a graph I had in my master's thesis about food production and population growth. Well, they go hand in hand, right?
Mhm.
You can't go back from that. It's how do we control our population growth? How do we control an ethical way or a means of production for food,
Mhm.
and what you put into is what you are, so the better food quality we have, the healthier you will be and the longer you'll live and have a better life. So there's an ethics around food choice, and you have to choose for yourself, and not to necessarily judge someone, because maybe they like I tried vegetarianism, you've tried vegetarianism, my buddy was a
Mhm.
vegetarian more longer than most people ever will be,
Yeah.
and he gave it a fight to the end, and he couldn't do it. He was getting
Mhm.
sick, so it's a tough conversation,
It is, and it is always a tough conversation, is in particular with food, because it's another thing that's like if you live, because it's funny. I find that my inner city friends, my friends that live around like a central business district or live like downtown Vancouver, downtown Toronto, Montreal, wherever these friends of mine are, the closer they are to like the urban hub, the more ruthless they are about organic living. You know what I mean? Like I live on a I, I live in the middle of nowhere. We have beef, we have chickens, we raise lots of stuff. And I've never been ruthless about it. I've never been like, that needs to be organic, this needs to be organic. Because I think when, like you said, like with food production, when you start to understand what it actually takes to grow something, and look, I don't agree with farming. Like I got friends that farm like, 4 sections. I have some that farm 5,000 acres, and I used to know a man that farmed 178,000 acres.
very busy.
Literally, he farmed from Pincher Creek to Lethbridge. He had all of that land that he was farming. But if you're farming that much, there's not much natural in the process. So when people are saying like, you shouldn't be using fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides, and yes, those things are horrible, but it's impossible to not use them. If you're industrially growing food, you can't grow 10,000 acres of barley without just putting thing on that crop that's going to help that barley. And it's a hard thing to describe to people.
Yeah. No, and I've done organic farming, so I get it. It's just the amount of weeds you have. So you may have a crop and you get 40% weeds. Well, what are you coming out with that in terms of you're even breaking even? You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's very difficult. I mean, obviously, as you become a better and better organic farmer, you can start to manage for that. But it's a challenge, and it's easy to have a moral stance on something. But I was total 100% organic until I actually was out there driving the tractor and counting the weeds.
Yeah.
It's challenging. It's very, very, very challenging. And this is where I think technology comes into things too. I think as we evolve and grow consciously, and we develop better technologies, hopefully some of these problems will go away as
Mm-hmm.
well. But I think it goes hand in hand with our conscious evolution and our moral responsibility and our ability to put that into inventions that create goodness and sustainability in our world. Because ultimately, sustainability, people think that's a dirty word, but it's not.
No,
Every
but
farmer was sustainable. 50 years ago, there was no pesticides and herbicides. Every farmer was organic. Our farmer
completely.
was sustainable. They wouldn't live. That's just an inherent part of being a human,
Mm-hmm.
is being sustainable. And when you start not being sustainable, that's when you start getting kicked in the ass, to be honest with you.
But
Take your face back.
that's exactly right. And like, but like you say, as this became a whole shot, and as this became a war for these guys to grow more food, make more money, more, it becomes more and more industrialized. Like you can see, I suppose, like you understand it. When you understand it, you see the slippery slope where I think a lot of people just assume that there's an opportunity for someone to be like, I'm going to grow organic or I'm not going to grow organic. Like it's not that simple. Like these farms, these food producers, like these are huge machines now. And like I have some of my best friends have these huge farms, and they spray the worst shit known to mankind on their crops. And like they know it's bad, but they know that they have to do it to survive. And so it's
Yeah,
this
nice.
no, and it's a weird spot for them because none of them are going to say like they see the poisonous symbol on their spray. They see it, they understand it, but they're like, what are we going to do? We can't I can't have this crop be destroyed by anything, like you say, weeds or pests or whatever it may be, or fungus or whatever. So it's
But but the consumers have the power. So
Yes.
your vote comes through your how you choose to spend your money. So
Hmm.
if you want to complain, spend your money in the right ways.
Yep.
And we're seeing how quickly with social media things are changing so quickly. All these movements that just come out of nowhere, and it changes our consciousness and it changes the way things happen so
Hmm.
quickly. See it in sport a lot right now. It's
Yep.
happening so quickly. So and we no one we, that's never happened in the history of humanity where the power is with the people, where something can change that quickly, where companies are pulling ads this quickly
Yeah.
because they don't want to have a bad relationship or a bad be associated with this whatever. And it's happening like almost instantaneously now.
Hmm.
Like we have the power if we exercise it responsibly and with good conscience. And again, you're in control of your choices and decisions. That's all you can really do is make good choices and good decisions, make good purchases. So in essence, if you're complaining about industrial agriculture, well, if you're buying all industrial food, you're part of the problem, right? You
What?
can't complain, right?
Completely. You're completely right. Yeah. We could go on and on with this
Yeah,
topic because it means it means a lot to me because it's like because I choose to eat. We eat very healthy here. We're very aware of what we eat, but we still like what you were saying about the consumer. Where we're my wife and I are marketers, so like we pay attention to the market more than anybody does. And what's crazy, what's happening right now, and A&W really led the way with grass-fed, no steroid, no grass-fed, no hormone, no something added.
yeah.
It's unbelievable how I personally can't stand grass-fed beef. It tastes horrible. The only animal that tastes decent grass-fed is an elk. Like we give we our cows get barley because they're the ones we're eating. But it's so amazing to me that people are saying like, no, 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 I don't want that. And it drives beef producers insane because they're saying like, well, no, we have to put in raw grow, like we have to use steroids, we have to use this, we have to use that to stay competitive. And the market now is saying, then stay competitive with yourself. We don't want your junk. Kick rocks.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because people are now actually able to participate in the market more than they were able to before.
Absolutely, and it's happening so quickly. This is why I'm so excited about life right now is because, man, the things we've seen in this short period of time is just amazing.
Hmm.
Like we always tend to focus on the negative, but I always see the hope and the opportunity, and it's just people say social media is a bad thing. It's a bad thing, but look at the goodness that's come out of it. It's how we use something. It's a device. It's a technology. It's what you put into it is what you'll get. So you can use social media to destroy the world, or you can use social media to transform the world.
Hmm.
Kind of how you use that.
I'm just like boiling over with like things to say because this is like our life. And I totally believe that way. Like if you want to change the world, and I say this to every single one of my friends, we say this to all of our clients as well. If you want to change the world really and truly, the best way to do that is to start your business and grow it as best you can so you actually have a voice to change things. There is no better way to change what is happening in the planet than to build yourself so you have that voice. Anything else is just, and social media is an excellent way to get that across, right? Like, yes, there is stupid people on social media. There are stupid acts happening on social media. There are people doing dumb things, but there are also beautiful people on social media who are all looking for the same things. And when you can plug into those people, you start building communities and you can start really fostering change. It's the only way to do it right now. That's
Yeah,
it. It's the only
yeah.
way.
And it's not going away. It's like the car never went away.
No.
You know what I mean? Like you stay with the horse and buggy. Well, that's your choice, but it's an evolutionary growth, right? It fills a need, right?
Yep.
Um, Same with social media. It fills a need. It's not ever never going to go away. So you better learn how to use it and use it effectively, and use it to empower the world and yourself. And something else will grow out of that, and grow out of that, and grow out of that. We're always evolving and growing. We're always evolving and growing to fill the needs that are right ahead of us. And so you gotta swim with it. You
You
really do.
do. But that's my biggest problem with spiritual people and like all you spiritual people listening to this. Like, honest to God, is like not liking social media is not stopping the problem.
No.
Not participate, like, you don't have to participate on social media, but if you're a spiritual, holistic, natural, if you identify with being that sort of a person, and you're on social media, participate with like-minded people to grow a conversation. Like participate with them back and forth. Like they're still just your people, and it's the only way, again, that you're going to foster change. You're going to build a community. You're going to start a dialogue. These things, it doesn't happen sitting at home in your kitchen. You know what I mean? Like you can,
Absolutely.
but anyway, what do you have coming up, Wade, as far as activities and courses and things of this nature?
Yeah, so with today's July 1st here, so it's Canada Day, so happy Canada Day. And in terms of not a lot, because I have a lot of farm work to do, I think. So I'm kind of pushing that off. So I have one workshop scheduled July 24th, 25th. It's an online introductory workshop. It's called the Shamanic Journey Pathway to Knowledge and Power through the Foundation of Shamanic Studies. Yeah, so if you go to my website, calgaryshaman.com, or just go to shamanism.org, which is the Foundation for Shamanic Studies website, you can get tapped into that. So if you're interested in learning how to journey, so shifting your consciousness, moving into the spirit realms, learning the territories of the spirit realms, maybe meeting a spirit helper, a spirit guide. This is where we start, and this course is an introductory course to all of our online shamanic workshops. Hopefully get a couple drum circles in over the summer. I mean, I try to do one once a month, depending on my schedule. And then hopefully this fall, like today, officially in Alberta, we're back to normal. COVID's over here, I guess.
Just like it never happened.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but we'll see. In terms of in-person workshops, hopefully this fall. I haven't got the green light yet from the Foundation for Shamanic Studies. They're an international body, so they have different kind of rules than we do locally. So if I do get the green light, I'm hoping to. I have got scheduled a introductory in-person workshop, which is called the Way of the Shaman, basic workshop scheduled for September 24th and 25th.
Oh,
Here
it's
in
so exciting.
Yeah, hopefully it goes ahead. I haven't held a workshop in person since February of 20, whatever, 20, yeah, 2020.
Holy.
And yeah, so hopefully that goes ahead. So if you're interested, check out calgaryshaman.com, and go to my my workshop tab, and all my upcoming workshops and drum circles are there. So check that out. And then advanced workshops, Dying and Beyond, and maybe Extraction this fall as well as another um, basic workshop in person, and I'm going to continue with the online teaching as well. So basically with the online teaching, we're doing a bit shorter, less condensed versions of the in-person work that is more focused on long distance healing from a distance rather than in person. Very powerful, very important work. But a few more prerequisites around that work because it's not as in depth. So you need the supporting workshops to give you the knowledge. So check out calgaryshaman.com or go to shamanism.org, and you should be able to check that all out. But that's kind of what's on the horizon.
Where can everyone get a hold of you on social media? Is there any other way to get
Yes,
a hold of you?
so I'm getting better at Facebook. I'm a slow learner, but Shaman Wade, go to Shaman Wade. Is that how, I don't even know how you just look up Shaman Wade. How's it work?
Yeah, it would be just look up Shaman Wade, on Facebook, and
Okay.
there's your Shaman Wade you have a public Shaman Wade site, but there's also a private group. If you are a practitioner, there's a bunch of us on there who take this more seriously than the average bear. So I know there's a couple ways to speak with Wade online, but
Well, explain it to us. I don't even know how to do this. So if I go into Facebook and I type in Shaman Wade, so I'm sure a lot of people in shamanism don't use Facebook. So go to Facebook, put Shaman Wade in, and what do I do next?
just search up it would be search up at Shaman Wade on Facebook, and then Wade would be on there, and then just request to be Wade's friend, and Wade will accept it, and then you're just basically all you're doing is knocking on the door, and then Wade decides to let you in or not. So if you don't get let in, it was Wade that chose to not let you in.
It's Wade doesn't know how to use Facebook. So try again till I respond. I'm bad with Facebook, man. Getting better.
You're getting really good at Facebook. We like I said, my wife and I are like, if you have a message, if you want to change the world, the only way to do it is online and working your guts out right now with a business. And it's I what I love so much about your I haven't seen so much of your Shaman Wade page. I pay more attention to the private one,
Yeah.
but it's so amazing to me to see these people that I only know from workshops that are actually people outside of there as well. So like I've scanned through it and seen, these different faces that I'm like, oh yeah, oh, perfect, right on, you're here too. So it's so nice to, as a practitioner and as a person who's looking to have this a community of people and a community of people where you know that no one's going to say any jerk off comments like anyone does at any other page, you know?
Yeah, and it's important actually. I wasn't really on board with any of this digital stuff, but we're on our phones all the time. I mean, we're always got our phone in our hand. We're always checking something out, weather or news, and that's how we're connecting. So it's a deeper level of connection, is what I'm learning. It's just and that's what I'm finding is people want more. They want more than just coming to a workshop, more than just a drum circle. They want to keep the community thriving, and that's a very powerful way to do it. And we're blessed. It's the thing about like an email. Imagine we used to send letters, writing a letter,
Yeah.
and then putting it in the mail, and 2 weeks later it showed up there, and waiting 2 weeks for it to come back. Think about that. And now we got email and texting and all this, instant messaging and
I couldn't. My oldest kids are 11 and 13 and they have cell phones now. They don't know what it's like to live without a cell phone. We were trying to explain to them like there was a time where if you wanted to go to a party or you wanted to see someone, you had to try and catch them wherever they landed. So you were like phoning your friend's house ahead of time saying, "Have them call me." And they're like, "No, that wasn't a time in the world." Yes, it was.
not long ago.
Yes, it was a time in the world, but
Funny we survived, hey?
it would be a better place if we, I saw the most amazing post. There's a marketer I follow out of Utah. He's this Mormon kid who's a genius. And he posted last night just this tweet, but he said, imagine if social media shut down at 6 p.m. like all other shops. It would be a totally different experience, but here we are. So anyway, we've been doing this for an hour and a half already, Wade. So
Time flies, and went off on many tangents, but all spiritual.
it was great. I really enjoyed that conversation. I hope everyone listening enjoyed that conversation. Do you have anything else you want to say sort of in closing today, Wade, or?
No, just enjoy the summer and be safe. I know in Alberta the regulations are kind of going away today, so be smart. We don't want to go back. We want to get out of this. We want to enjoy life again as normal, and meet again in person. Like, I'm really looking forward to meeting everyone in person again. It's been a long time, and you really start to appreciate your human connections, and the power of that. And well, I guess what this COVID experience has taught me is the power of spirit, and how connected we are just through these screens and through these podcasts, and just through doing the work online. It's blown my mind, and it's just given me a deeper faith in all this. And so it's been a blessing in disguise in a lot of ways. So have fun
100%.
and keep in touch, and we'll see you next time.
Just right what you said there, Wade. It's crazy. Like as I look back on this COVID time will forever have been the time of my life where like my spiritual practice came together, and it was all done virtually.
Yeah,
Like that's so crazy. But I mean, it makes sense. Lane and I were talking about this, right? Like God evolves with everything else. If our consciousness is attached to it, this is God's
absolutely.
representation as much as anything else. So why wouldn't God work through a computer screen the way God would work in a yurt or in a teepee or on the ground, anywhere, So it's
Amen, brother.
with that, everyone, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. Apologies that we didn't have we didn't have a second conversation faster than we did. There was about a month lull there between Wade and I having this first and second conversation. They'll start coming faster now. There's just I'd love to tell you excuses, but they're all just excuses. If my wife were sitting here, she'd say, shut up and stop making excuses. So anyway.
More. I think I've ran out of things to say. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't think that's the problem, Wade. I don't think guys like you and I run out of things to say. But anyway, thank you very much, Wade. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you next time.